If I just pull this stuff out of the wall.
What you do is you just take the two plugs out of the camera and shut that little side window, and you got no feed.
Don't pull them out of the wall for it. Yeah, I got you.
Here's the camera plug.
Technology is not his forte. Did you call? No. I should play my clarinet.
And I got there, the kid from the license. I reached out to that, he screeched. He was like, okay, we're good.
Like to hear that. Let's call this meeting to order, and if you indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And are there any adjustments to the agenda?
There are no.
Oh, my heavens, that's good. Moving along, approval of minutes for the November 15th meeting. Do I hear?
Seconded.
Motion and second to accept those minutes. Any discussion on that motion?
I did just notice it says Donald Noyes, and it's Donald Olson for the public comment.
We will change that.
Olson.
Any other? Hearing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Also, approval of minutes of the November 28th meeting.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? And that passes as well. This is the time for anyone to speak in the public or has any questions or comments. If you would say your name and where you're
Yes,
from?
my name's Linda Seavey, and I'm from Plymouth, Maine. And Tanya is one of our representatives who's here tonight, and I don't see David Cameron here. But I have something that I would like to just read quickly to you.
Certainly.
And I have a couple of copies, but I also have sent a copy of that to Mr. Hammer's office so that everyone on the committee can receive a letter.
Thank you.
Dear RSU 19 school board members, this is my 72nd year as a resident of Plymouth, Maine. I attended Plymouth School for 9 years, that's correct, Plymouth School, and then Newport High School, graduating in 1968. 2 of my grandchildren are attending the Etna Dixmont Plymouth School. Our grandson started in school for 2 years, and then he was told that he had to go to a different school located on the Dixmont Road in Etna, Maine. He was very upset with this change at first, but his parents explained to him that his dad went to school there, and it was a good school. He has been very happy, and he likes the small school surroundings. He knows all the students in his classroom, and he's not afraid to be dropped off the bus and go into the school building. After reading a letter from Courtney Cole addressed to the school board, one thing I asked myself was, how did the teachers treat all of Plymouth students? Don't Plymouth taxpayers and their children deserve a name on a building and be acknowledged in this district? As a grandparent, I feel very passionate that adding Plymouth to the school building will benefit all the Plymouth students. Don't they have as many rights as the rest in this district? It was mentioned in a separate letter signed by 12 teachers that it would change one of the hands-on learning opportunities by adding another town while comparing and contrasting communities. I live in Plymouth on the Etna Road, and did you know that Plymouth Center is where 5 roads meet? I also do not see how this would add financial consequences that will occur in the future. There seems to be one right move, and that is to add Plymouth to the school name and all correspondence. Plymouth does send over $77,000 a month to the district, and I feel we should be recognized. Maybe another solution is to start a committee for a new school building in Plymouth for preschool to 4th grade. Linda Seavey. Thank you very much for your time. And I'm going to give you this. And there are a couple of copies in there that you can pass around. And thank you. I know that this is a dedicated position that all of you spend hours here in this school building, and we really do appreciate your time. Hi, Dave. I didn't see you at first.
Linda, thank you very much. Know that this is an ongoing discussion, and
Yes.
as I am aware, there's been no decisions made, so thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to address the board? Hearing none, I do want to, in case there was somebody that was here the other night, the last meeting, I did want those to know that the board has been fully informed of the situation, and the administration will continue to investigate all reported incidences. This board supports the Nokomis High School administration and the superintendent. The school board feels that it has policies in place to support students and families who report disruptive behavior. The board wants all students to feel safe and listened to, and they will continue to monitor the situation brought forth at the last meeting. Thank you very much. So with that, we will move on to reading of communications.
Yeah, as you know, Linda sent that letter out, we tried to shoot that out to you guys today, if you didn't get a chance to read it, Linda. We also did receive 2 letters of correspondence through Jess at the naming committee the other night, but those have also been forwarded to you, and I have copies of those. If you haven't got a chance to get your email, would like to meet those. That's the letter that Linda referenced from, one from 12 teachers at night, and also Courtney Cole's letter. So if you haven't read those, you want to? I haven't. If not, Evelyn has sent those to you as well.
I see that we have administrative notes in our packet, so that would be our administrative report unless Mary or Jane want to add. And Ellen, I have to put my glasses on to see way down here.
Actually, I do, if anyone wants to come on Friday at about 1 o'clock, we're doing a taste test of the cauliflower pizza that features our district, just in case.
Wonderful,
Wonderful.
wonderful. Moving along, superintendent's report.
Yeah, I've got a few things, and then I'm going to, I'll speak a little bit to the building report too as well with Chris when we get there, because I'm not going to have a meeting tomorrow night. One other thing I wanted to update people on from last time that came up about the bank account and the football lights. I did talk to the president, who's been president for a while. I thought he was, but I didn't know completely. But he and I had a conversation, and anybody who donated money for lights back in the day, there was a separate light account at the credit union in the where Hannaford is, and that was separate from the boosters. I mean, that was boosters, but it was separate. It was not part of the school account. And if people thought they had put aside money for lights, it went to the lights. When the lights were purchased from Lewiston, there was not enough money in the light account to cover the whole purchase of the lights at 25 grand. So they did borrow the money from the boosters, not from anybody else, to supplement that money. And so if anybody wants to really track down that check and see what it was written, that goes to the boosters in that account at the Hannaford Credit Union. There is this thing called All Sports Boosters, and that is 2 events, I believe. One is a dance that's in the beginning of the year, and then back in the day, they think they sold discount cards to support raising the money for those 2 scholarships. And when you talk All Sports Boosters, those 2 scholarships is all about All Sports Boosters. It's not like all the sports boosters, because each team can raise money for themselves if they want to do something fun. Like you heard in baseball did it last year. Back in the day, Dave sold a lot of money for concessions when the soccer field was down there, and so that money goes into the soccer account because that's what he did for that. And so that money still sits in those accounts. If anybody wants to know that, they need to go to that coach or whoever's running that account. Okay, so those aren't part of the All Sports Boosters. All Sports Boosters is a 2 event. Now we have kind of separated, and we have high school football boosters now, and I believe there's elementary sports boosters. And again, being familiar with this is the kind of when your kids growing up and playing pee-wee football, you support those activities, and then those money goes to that, and then if that booster group wants to pass it on to the high school, that happens. But now if you're a high school booster parent and you want to give money to boosters, you got to understand that it's at the high school booster level. Okay, so it was good for me to get clarity on that. I think people know, Jay Demchuk is the president. He's been the president. He'll answer questions. But I think for me, it cleared it all up, that we're not mixing funds at the high school other than those sports that have those accounts, and that's all about whoever goes to that coach and discusses that. So I will go into the lights when we get into the building project, but that I just wanted to make sure that we answered that in public comment, because that was brought up a little bit during the meeting. So further, We are working with this person named Gary Sigrist, who's a former teacher and police officer. He's out in the Midwest, but he's a really nice resource for us to think about our safety plans and our responses to school safety. He actually created about 5-10-minute videos for each one of our staff to tailor to each school, and the principals are showing those videos to their staff, and it's more this different response to events that happen in our community, and having teachers be able to, you know, reflect and respond appropriately to the situation. Like, an example would be back in the day, when you had a fire drill, the teacher would line up, come out last, make sure they had all the kids in the front, and, you know, everybody had their coats, and then push the kids out into the hall. The response now is, from this guy's perspective, is the teacher goes out first, because if you remember some of the events that we've had, people pulled fire alarms, and the teacher needs to be out there in the hallway to see if it's safe to continue to move about the building. There's also certain scenarios that we've talked about in this building where if there was a threat on that side of the building, you know, does Angela lock down on this side and the kids sit in the classroom, or do they evacuate? Do they go over to, you know, get as far away as they possibly can to Sebastopol, right? So we're trying to have these teachers kind of respond to these situations in small groups and then larger groups. And then we're also trying to do some training on to have individual school-based threat assessment teams. And again, this is from the Department of Education. There's 8 modules, E-modules that these teams will go through for school-based teams. And then there's a follow-up with the region, national specialist who we do a morning session from about 8 to 1 or 9 to 1. Also following up on the 8 modules that we did, and it's all talking about scenarios that are specific to your team. So I just wanted you to know on the back end, we are trying to think about threats. I think it's thinking about threats in a new way, because even when I first started doing that as a elementary principal, when we first started this, and it's the most scary thing that you ever have to go through, is to go through a threat practice when you keep sitting kids up against a bookcase and hoping nothing happens to them. Well, now we don't sit them down anymore. They shouldn't be sitting there. They need to get out of the room if they possibly can, and they need to be standing in a way they're not just going to be, for lack of better words. Yes, Paul. So we're just want you to let you know that we're training with our staff. We're trying to think about these things. It's not fun to think about, but we never know, you know, what's going to come down the road. And our principals are responding. Our teachers are stepping up to be part of these threat assessment teams. And I would say a threat assessment is also students that are experiencing conflicted homes, you know, suicide, or those types of things. It's not, I mean, that's probably the type of threat we're going to come up against, with domestic violence type of situation. If, you know, God forbid, it's not going to be, you know, shooting, but there are going to be threat assessments. So those trainings, those 8 modules, I believe, will have us be looking at kids in a different way to hopefully see those other threats that are hidden, and hopefully we'll address some of the things that we've been talking about in the last couple of meetings. So we're going to just jump into those 8 modules right after the holidays, and then the 9-1 level 2 training, I think, is going to be later on in the year, because like large school districts will take over large spots of time. Like Bangor's going to do their whole threat assessment teams, and we will have a pretty big set of teams with 4 or 5 people out of each building coming up and doing those modules. So that are the 2 things that I wanted to bring up. So.
Any questions for Mike?
Did you say they're watching videos and stuff?
Right now, we've created a separate video for each staff. Like Ellen watched it at a staff meeting with her, so we could go over it if there's any questions that they had initially there. And then this threat assessment teams will watch 8 videos, and then we bring this guy back during one of our all-day half-day workshops and work with the whole staff together. So he's actually going to come in person here.
Kim, will you be sent those videos so we know what?
Yeah. It's a 10-minute, easy-to-see video, absolutely.
Anything else? Moving on. Board chair report. I don't really have anything, but I thank you for all the messages that you sent me. It was nice to hear from everybody, and we're moving slowly, but we're moving forward. So, with that, let's go to reports of special committees, and it looks like budget has not met. And building has not met, but.
I can do a report.
Yeah, building, we just had the, you know, basic projects are continuing to move forward, and then Mike is gonna give an update on the lights.
Yeah. So I got a couple things. In terms of Somerset and the water project update, at the end of November, they were supposed to ship some pieces out of Massachusetts, and they ended up, they were supposed to ship them to us, and they ended up in Massachusetts. So one of those people was gonna bring them out the first week of December, and that hasn't happened. But we are taking tests as they come up for water tests, and most of them are passing water quality and coming back positive, like there's one for cyanide and all these other things. The ones we're waiting on is PFAS, which is, you know, obviously on the front of people's minds right now. Those results haven't come back, but when they do come back, that's going to determine whether we need a water softener or a filter system. That's continuing to be set up, and the electrician needs to come back, but that project is still ongoing, but hopefully wrapping up the last few pieces of it. And a guy named Jeff Twitchell, he does air and water. He's working with the people from the architect for that project to make sure that we will have the right setup once we have the results of what our water's looking like. And here at this building, the doors have been an issue. They're coming to an end. We have we've put enough pressure on Flame, which is these big cement doors right here from California, and American Glass, that they're giving us some attention, and we're not paying them any money, obviously, until we get this the way we want. And I think he's going to go walk through with our security guy, Alicia, and I the next couple of weeks and try to knock those out. There was a thing about an Aetna, there was a hot water issue that I think Mr. Carter accurately determined would be a mixing valve, and it was a mixing valve, and it's been fixed, and you get hot water hitting there. And the price of our old building has been down, it's down to $399.9. Hopefully we'll start to get some offers and get rid of that this winter. Lights. So lights, so Simon on the 22nd did meet with somebody from Musco. They are the ones that created the pipe poles over there that we have. There's still 2 or 3 different options. One of the options went up significantly, but that's the LED lights with new Musco poles, and it's a 25-year warranty, 24/7 support, and 50%, but it's expensive. It's between $175 and $185 without any of the support that we need from the other people. We can reinstall our existing poles and use the 36 existing fixtures for about 58 to 63, but that's also trying to remove those concrete bases. And if something happens to those when we're removing the concrete, if something happens, it ruins the integrity of the pole. There's also, with the size of the poles and having the guy come in and do a survey of the site, we want to put the poles back so they're not right up against the side of the tracks, so you're not looking at them if you're sitting in the bleachers. We would like to have them back a little bit further. Kind of remains to be seen whether that can be done with the new poles, but not the old poles. There's also just new poles and cross arms, which would move the poles back for about $75,000 to $80,000 dollars. So there's still 2 or 3 different options out there, and the last thing that Simon is waiting for is actually for Musco to send us the power that are needed for the LED lights, because the size of the transformer at the bottom of the Musco poles that we have right now is huge, and the power that's needed for those is huge. And that determines what we would take to Gilman or somebody else who's willing to donate some of the electrical power. So, and we also, Leslie Alley's husband, Andrew, he was there with Simon to kind of hear all this and to to absorb this project. So, on some levels, it's great to have better information. I mean, obviously, if you have a 25-year warranty and you're not using lights that take a half an hour to turn on and turn off, your long-term payback is probably the LED lights, and make sure that we have poles and and they're mapped out by somebody who does this every day. If we wanted to do some of the other options and combinations, I mean, poles, and old lights, we can do that. And then there is one option that there may be a rec program or somebody who wants to purchase the poles that we have and the lights, and, you know, maybe upgrade their, that might offset some of the costs as well. So, you know, I think that's still something that needs to be added around, and get a little bit more information from Simon when he goes back on the electrical, and see what, and not speaking for anybody who's committed anything, what Gilman will put up, and then actually getting a commitment from Chimbro, who still theoretically said that they will donate the lifts and some of the installation, and see what the actual cost is at the end of the day.
Any questions?
So does this light company give you a scope of the work? Is that what we're waiting for?
They've done some of that. They've looked at it, and they design it, and they engineer it, and they make sure they test it, because you also have to test where the poles are in the ground so that you know what's underneath it, so that it's not gonna fall or sink or do any of those. So they do all that engineering work, and they have come out to the site and taken a look at it.
So the ones with the 25-year warranty, Jason's got it down, 175. So the warranty includes them repairing every valve that goes out 25 years?
25-year includes materials, on-site parts, labor, maintenance, guaranteed light levels, and 24/7 support. Ball tracker technology optimizes visibility of the ball in play with no glare for players. Cheaper electrical materials.
Any other questions? I would say we have some more discussion needed. Moving along to education. Ryan is not here. I'm sure that Mike can fill us in, but it was a very good meeting.
Mike wasn't there, but I know there was 2 or 3 presentations by Food Corps that were very well received. So maybe somebody else who was at that committee, but I know a lot of support for those programs. I mean, I've seen them in use where the kids are out there, they're doing science, they're doing reading, they're doing all different things, and getting out and exploring. So I don't know if somebody at that committee wants to pick that up, or, I mean, Ryan's got a pretty detailed report, and I'm not sure whether everyone sent you some of the accompanying documents to look.
I almost wish that everyone was at that meeting, because I left completely inspired on my personal level. But the energy that the people have that are running these programs was just infectious. It was amazing. They were super passionate about it. They had all kinds of wonderful things to show about the children and how they're really getting their hands dirty. And some kids are lugging boulders for fun. They think picking up granite and moving it from place to place is a great thing for the heat of the plants. And the taste testing that is being done is just, you know, kids are eating radishes, kids are eating kale. Like, that's usually not something that little children love to eat. So I thought it was fantastic. It was a really wonderful meeting, and I encourage you all to ask questions about this program, because I personally hope that it grows massively to support our district and our food program, which is awesome.
Speaking of the program growing, there is going to need, if we're going to continue with this program, the budget committee is going to have to realize that the position is going to need to be paid for. It's paid for through this year, but it's not going to be moving forward. In order for it to stick around, we're going to have to pull in some money for that slot to keep that going.
And that was one of the comments that was made the other night, and it would definitely be discussed at the budget level.
We also talked about bringing it from, there's like certain aspects that are in the high school, but there's like a stopping ground kind of in the middle school, and to bring that throughout the years so the students can continue with that passion. So that was pretty interesting. I thought.
Any questions?
Just a note that it says September on the minutes.
Okay, we'll take that as a lesson.
She was so good.
I'm not ready. I'm not ready for Christmas. Okay, policy committee.
policy committee met in November, and the majority of the meeting consisted of revisions to the student dress code, which I believe we have for first reading. And before that, we spoke or heard at length about drug and alcohol use, but specifically vaping in the middle school. But further discussion of that was put on hold for the future. I should not be spacing the name. The vice principal, Scott Finnemore, excuse me, had come and spoke with us, but apparently they had not fully formulated their ideas and recommendations that they wanted to have, so it was really a preliminary discussion. And then we also reviewed community use of facilities, which we also have for first reading, which is really mostly a housekeeping type thing. And I believe that was the extent of the meeting. And so I suppose I could make a motion.
Well, I have some questions about the dress code policy.
Let's get a
We need to
motion.
have a motion.
And I should have started by saying only half the members were there if you look at the list. So, the other half weren't. Anyways, I would make a motion that we accept for first reading student dress code. Let me get to it. Something about that. JICA.
Did you want to take them as a group, or
Well,
is that individual?
that was the only motion I made.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right, we have a motion and a second on the floor to accept the student dress code, JICA, for first reading. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, so I was wondering from the current edits, my understanding at the policy meeting, one of the first meetings we had, was we were modernizing our dress code policy. But it seems like we went backwards a bit and making it quite a bit more strict. And I'm concerned that that is going to particularly single out or disproportionately single out female students, because obviously female students are the only ones that wear bra and tank tops or have straps showing. And based on comments made previously that some might think that what female students wear is distracting to other students. So I don't know that we should be governing based on the behavior of other students, based on what somebody might have on their body. So maybe this should go back to the committee for further discussion. Or maybe we could ask that staff have some more input, or take a particular look at the dress code and have some input. Can this go back to staff?
Staff has come to 2 meetings at least and discussed.
Principals says staff. What about teachers, who also have to enforce the dress code policy? Have teachers taken a specific look at the changes?
The administrators just, they spoke for teachers somewhat in their capacity.
Yeah, I don't know if the answer was that, how many teachers were married.
So at one meeting that I was at, which I missed the last meeting, Mary specifically said that bra straps and tank top straps, visible waistbands, basically what we put red lines through, and midriff exposure was not in her building an issue. And she spoke at length about appropriate dress in her building. Specifically that her students are more mature than students that are in the middle school building, and there's differences in the handbooks to address some of those details.
May I make a comment? Oh, I'm sorry, no, you had your hand up before me.
But it's just
No.
kind of to piggyback on that, at where is the enforcement coming? Because I know, there are baseball caps and hoods being worn in some buildings, and that would explain, like, some can handle it and some can't. But if it's in a policy that is district-wide, we're putting ourselves into a corner, painting ourselves in and saying, well, everyone has to be doing this, and it's not fair for those teachers or staff that are adhering by the policy as written, and those that are choosing to say, well, it's okay, it's not a problem. I want to kind of be a little bit more, this is very specific, and if there aren't issues, then we need to be looking at rewording this.
Yeah, we talked about that at length. It is confusing. I don't know why, I guess we didn't have suggestions of how to change it, but, so, I think people look at that at first glance and say that it means you cannot wear baseball caps and hoods, but it actually just says it's only if it deters clear identifications of students' faces. So it's not saying you can't wear baseball caps and hoods.
That's an interpretation.
But we'll go, I'll jump to the midriff, should be covered, that kind of goes to that, is definitely singling out the females, but, so it's our teachers going and say, okay, I can see your midriff, you've got to go, who's dress coding these kids? And is everyone going to be doing it the same way?
No.
So, I'm opposed to this motion, even though I made it. I had also voted against the previous first reading of this policy, which at that point, these changes had not been made. And the first time I voted against it because I really didn't think that we had taken enough ownership, and maybe I still don't think we've taken enough ownership of this policy. But in terms of these specific changes that were made, they were, the majority of the committee, which was half the committee that met, these were the changes that were recommended. If I understood some of the reasoning behind that, it was the idea that we should have the expectation that students dress more professionally at school. It was one of the themes that I heard about that. To me, my concern is that some of that language almost seems to go against the opening paragraph of the policy, which states that it'll be the responsibility of the students and their parents for dress and appearance. And yet then we are going on and really the whole paragraph, because it seems to essentially say that we're going to have a dress code that isn't going to allow for disruption. And it's not clear to me that language is consistent with the opening paragraph, where we're sort of more restricting what students can and cannot wear.
So, exactly, I agree with that, because if we're leaving it up to students and parents, and mom and dad work before the bus comes or before they have to arrive, that makes it extremely difficult to leave it up to the parents. And then where does that responsibility lie? Like, who is making that enforcement? I kind of looked at it a couple of ways when it comes to, obviously the bra strap. Most males are not wearing those these days, and that's one thing. But it's also midriff for people that are wearing like their football shirt around the school and their male bellies are hanging out, and there's all kinds of things being seen that is inappropriate, especially when we're on campus that have little ones next door and even the younger children in the middle school. So as a mom, when I'm dropping my student off, I don't want to see a young girl or a young gentleman's rear end hanging out of the base of their shorts. And I don't want to see, excess cleavage hanging out and leaves little to the imagination. There's definitely appropriate dress to be in a public eye and not, and that goes for male and female. Me personally, if you have undergarments on, but your pants are down to your thighs and they're held on by a belt and you have to walk like a duck to try to keep them up, that's also inappropriate. So I think this is specific but it's also very broad into an interpretation that you could read it one way or another. It could be you feeling that it's gender specific, and it's really a broad statement of, you know, don't have spaghetti straps if you're whoever, don't have bits and pieces hanging out if you're whoever, and do not have midriff. And I don't think that's too much to ask for. You're here to receive an education. This is not a fashion school.
So, one of the statements that gets made in our second paragraph is guidelines for student dress will be developed and enforced by the administration and inside the schools. And then we lay out the guidelines for dress and basically take that out of the schools. Purview.
Jason?
That's
No. So, one word that was used, and I used it myself, was interpretation. If there can be interpretation, it's not policy. So until this is clear and concise, or as vague as it needs to be, we can't be interpreting that the baseball caps are okay because they're not covering or not. They're either allowed or not. Something I brought up last time was the weapons thing. If a kid comes to school with a Glock sweatshirt, is that at promoting the use of weapons? You know, no different than a Chevy sweatshirt. And then again, the hate speech. You know, I hate to even bring that up these days because hate speech is so construed. So we're either going to mandate every little thing, or we're going to leave it up to the parents and the school individuals. So if we can't enforce it, there's no sense in having a policy.
Jen?
I'd say, first of all, I agree with what Melanie said. And second of all, to Chris's point, the second paragraph that begins with guidelines, we had interpreted that as each school already has like an addendum to the dress code already that makes it different for each school. And I think if they can do that, which that seems like that paragraph allows them to do, then anything that comes after that is just maybe a base to start on, but you may need to change it for your individual school.
So each school has their own dress code policy.
They have a handbook, and they have what they deem as appropriate or not appropriate.
So which trumps which? If this policy is more stringent and their handbook isn't, what comes first?
Well, it's like hats in middle school are a distraction and they're a disruption because the kids hit each other with them. So Andrew's going to say no hats unless you pay for it every other day. The high school kids can, well, I've seen them hit each other, but I mean, they go, boom, it's done, and they walk away, put that back on. It's not an issue, it's not going to disrupt somebody, it's not going to get in a fight, so that they have to go down to the office and get talked to for it. Blankets at the middle school are a problem because kids are running around the hallways in their capes. Sometimes a blanket for a high school kid for security and those types of things is going to be okay. You're not going to use it as a gate and run down the hallway and be disruptive. So there were those discrepancies. Different grade levels and the regular handbooks, and so it was clear the expectation would be there in that handbook. It's like toys, a matchbox card with two of the second and third graders on. Could be a distraction and nothing's going to get done. If somebody bringing a matchbox in at middle school or high school, they'll play with it at recess and it won't be an issue, right? So we could, that's right, you could go lay down 11 all every time, but as long as it's clearly spelled out at the grade level and it's not a surprise to you, oh, I can't do that. I think that's where the building principals get some more discretion.
But policy trumps everything.
And it doesn't, well, what I worry about, I guess, is just pitting teacher against teacher or staff against staff, building against building kind of thing, and that's not the kind of morale that we want from kids and the staff, so that's my only concern there.
Paul?
one quick solution to it, you've heard me say it before, school uniform. That'll solve all these middle ground things. If we want professionalism in school, if we command respect or whatever, you can have respect between students if they are not trying to win a fashion race or something. And as I said before, the staff's got all they can do to maintain, reading, writing, and arithmetic. I've always been a fan of school uniforms. You know where I might stand on that, but if we want decorum, professionalism, and we're not gonna split hairs on, it seems like we've now brought, I don't know, sexism into it. The girls are being picked on more than the boys, as Jen said.
We always were.
You mean, boys can have their boy belly sticking out. I think if we're gonna have a dress code, let's have a dress code. All this splitting hairs is not useful. It's been proven throughout the United States that school uniforms work. And that doesn't mean you gotta say that it's a white shirt and a khaki bottom of some sort. You could have 7 colors. If a person wants to mix the colors that don't, you ladies, I don't know, I pick stuff out of my closet, they're not, but if it doesn't match, then that's their individualism. That's where, it stops there, your individualism, you're wearing something that don't match. I think this is a wishy-washy, it's a wishy-washy policy. As it's written there, I do appreciate the strike of the red lines, but it's still wishy-washy. We're the doves. If we want the kids to come in tuxedos, we're the school board, they come in tuxedos. If we want, if we want the ladies the girls to wear whatever, that's what we tell them to wear. We are the guidance of this school and what people wear. Let's stand up and make the guidance. Let's not split these hairs.
So, in some ways, I kind of agree with Paul, but, one of my concerns is that my kids, and I hate to make it personal, but it's an easy way to explain it. They choose their own clothes, they dress themselves, they go to school. Personally, I have some concerns over some of their choices. They could care less what I think. And they could definitely care even less what Paul thinks about how they dress at school. And, they come and they want to study and learn and be students. And I'm concerned that if we have a stricter dress code that distracts from kids' ability to get an education because we're so busy enforcing a stricter dress code, that unto itself can turn into a disruption in the school. So I think there's got to be the right balance there. And I don't think it should be a dress code that kids who are coming serious about school can accidentally fall into the trap of being dress coded. So
I see 2 options here. One, we have a motion on the floor and a second, and so we can vote on it. Or the individuals that made that motion can rescind it, and we can put this back into the policy committee bailiwick, if that's acceptable to everyone.
What's the motion, just for the dress code?
To put it on for first reading. So, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion, which is to accept the policy as written for first reading? All those in favor? Those opposed? Very good.
now, the problem we have is I'm not quite sure what to do to take everybody
opposed.
Yeah.
and turn it into something we can all support, so.
That
I'm
was,
happy.
that was my next conversation. My next conversation is, we need to make sure that we are at the policy committee meeting, or a good healthy amount of us are at the policy committee meeting, because this is where it's gonna be ironed out.
I can also send, Mary, you're about ready to raise your hand about sending it to teachers, but I can definitely have it get to some teachers prior to the next policy.
That's what I was gonna say, but I think this is the problem with dress code policies, is kind of what you're all experiencing in your own conversations. And it's like, and I'm not trying to pinpoint anybody, but why do you have kids that go to school? And I'm thinking, have you guys been watching what your kids are wearing in school, your own kids? And it's interpretation sometimes, like, you know, like I hear what you're saying, Jason, like concrete, but I don't care what you put down, there's still a measure of subjectivity. And I would say from the teacher end, what teachers would tell you that's really challenging, at least at the high school level, you really wanna go up to a female student and say, your top showing too much cleavage? Because I can tell you, but the response is gonna be, why are you looking at my breast? You know, why are you looking at my midriff? It's a really dicey situation, like, to put teachers in, and like, honestly, I agree with Paul, like, if you want something that's really concrete, it almost has to be a school uniform piece. You know, I think that original Bangor policy I liked. I think there's a way to put a statement in there, you know, that schools reserve the right to, you know, like, modify, like, for articles of clothing that create distractions. Like, you know, we can't, you know, we've got from 40-year-olds to 18 or 19-year-olds, like, I think it's impossible, like, to just, you know, and then you get into this, is that, you know, is it worth the battle? Like, we used to say no hats, and a few years ago, the assistant principal we had just said, and I saw, like, it created so many fires to say, take your hat off, don't wear your hat, and, like, the kids would be like, why? They weren't, you know, they weren't younger kids, like, at middle school age, which I can see them being foolish with it. They just had their favorite hat off. So I don't know, like, good luck. That's what I'm gonna say, is good luck.
So I think maybe to help the policy committee to move along, is that if you could send the Bangor policy.
We've already been over it.
I
Which is
know,
what this
but
is.
to everybody, and also put a little note there saying you are strongly encouraged to participate at the policy committee meeting, and tell when the date is, so that we can hammer this out and have it be finished.
Well, it's not rocket science. The military does it all the time. Your mustache can't go over here. You know, not to say that we need to be militant about it, but it can be very concisely written, where so many inches below, I don't know, ladies help me out, but so many inches here with a collar. So,
Right,
know,
but then you get into
just
like,
start-
we're gonna have teachers out here with a tape measure? I mean,
Well, no, I mean, if you don't give it some teeth, you're gonna run into the circle that Mary's talking about. You're gonna be running in a circle.
So we're gonna run in a
And it
circle.
was policed, like, 25 years ago, it was you have a rip in your pants, call your parent, have them come pick you up. I mean, I personally was dropped off at my house because I had a tear in my jeans. That happened that morning when I was doing my barn chores. It happens, but it was against dress code, and when I got there, I got sent home. And if you had an inappropriate shirt on, you turned it on inside out, and you continued your day. I mean, it was policed to a high extent. And I think that's what Mr. Winslow did for 7 hours out of the day, was police students on their clothing. And that is such a waste of resources. Like, I mean, there's way more exciting things to do with a student that it's like, go in the bathroom, turn your shirt around. Or how strict are we?
It's not
it's
difficult.
true, but on the other hand, I think, and we've heard from administrators, we've heard from teachers, you know, even as a parent, I feel that same way, you feel that same way. These kids should not be walking around school half naked.
No, it's inappropriate. It's
So
inappropriate.
how do
You can
you-
get a citation from walking in a city because of your clothing, then you should not be wearing the same clothing to school. I mean, that's it. it's indecent exposure at some point when things are hanging out, and males and females, so.
Make sure to attend, please. And moving on, did the policy
I can make
committee
another
have-
motion, motion to accept, I'll make this as a group, or changes to KFE1, KFE2, KFE2. I don't,
One was a delete an old policy.
Yeah, delete KFE too.
So I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor to address the rest of the policies for first reading. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
There was one issue, it looks like the KFE2 is listed for both documents, the Barrington Community Center use agreement and then the use waiver release. Is that intentional?
I think what I'm seeing was one is to be removed and the other one is to take its place.
Replace, okay.
Is that right, Mark?
yeah, well, I think whatever is in
KFE.
red or struck, and then the black language would remain.
So is that title gonna stay the same?
KF's gonna be now the community use, KFE2 is now gonna be the community use of school facility
Okay.
waiver. Hold on, Mr. Jones.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? We are on for first reading. I see second reading, none. Is there anything else that you wanted to?
Well, I believe I went through it before.
Yeah, you're gonna have the vaping one's coming up, and there's a couple other policies that you're gonna be presented from the middle school and high school principal, assistant principal.
And the next policy meeting, do you have a date just so that we can let everybody know now?
Well, it's the fourth Tuesday of the month, is it?
So that would be the 20th. No, it wouldn't be, that would be the 27th.
And are we having one that
Oh, I've already seen wrinkled up noses, so.
That's great after Christmas. Yeah. I would say no.
All right, so
Yeah, school vacation.
Yeah.
January 24th is the next one. So make sure you're there, January 24th, across the street. And that's the policy meeting. Thank you. Moving along to transportation, did not meet. Tri-county,
Never meeted, I reported out last time, and then, we meet there.
okay. Negotiations has not met. Pandemic has not met. Renaming committee. Jessica, do you have anything?
So we met last Thursday, and Mrs. Cole was there, and we reviewed the letters that she brought with her, by herself, and of course the teachers. And a lot of the comment that was made, even within the group and Ms. Cole, was that changing the name was gonna change kind of the history. And then it was brought up that Etna and Dixmont are still going to be the same towns that are in the school, so the historical value does not change. You know, plaques are not gonna change, documentation's not gonna change. What's in the past is gonna still be received in the school the same way. But that a lot of the students implement, and the taxpayers and parents, they want to be included, they don't want to be excluded. And in this modern world, you know, that's important to people, to be included in what they're doing and where they're paying their taxes. So we decided that we were going to put a survey together and send it out and get some ideas and some benefit from the townspeople. And within that, we used what had been sent out previously, so we're just gonna modify that and really kind of drill down a little bit to who's completing the survey. Is it going to be someone that is a staff member? Is it going to be a community member, just a taxpayer, landowner, things like that? So we're in the process of doing that right now. It was a lot more powerful than I expected it to be about a rename, and there was a couple of names brought up, like what about Penobscot Elementary? Well, we can't really do that because there's already a Penobscot school, and then why change it at all? Why does Plymouth need to be included? And I think we heard from Linda as to why the townspeople feel that way. And I spoke to, it's not me personally, I don't live in those towns, it doesn't affect me or my children, I don't have a personal feeling on it, but there's a lot of people that have not had the opportunity to have that voice and to speak up, and I really feel strongly, and we decided on going this avenue, so that's where we're gonna go. And we will meet again on Wednesday, the 11th at 5:30.
January 11th.
January 11th.
So who's getting the survey?
We are putting it together and we're going to send it out, and honestly, that has not been decided if it was just gonna go to those townspeople and that staff, or if it was gonna be sent district-wide, or
But
we
who
haven't
sent the other one?
determined
Was it sent district-wide?
It was.
It was, yeah, that was part of the conversation.
I think it's only fair only because you're at 2 towns versus 1, you know what I mean, like number-wise, it's gonna.
Yeah, we'll discuss that, but you're right, it's a good point, because there was a lot more naming going on, but you're right, everybody got a chance to, you get a broader perspective, Cream, it's a good point. I can tell you also that, have more pieces with me.
Yes.
I got some emails today, and this is a thing, this is an education for the board, because it is charged on both sides. There are people who are gonna look, and your policy indicates the fact that there's a process for this. You can go to this naming committee, which is a subset of the building committee, and you can get input, you couldn't, they can bring it right back to you that this is our decision, but this does come back to you ultimately and exclusively with this board to make this decision. And there is inclusivity, definitely inclusivity, because there's one person who said, something email said, I'm a 5th grader and I am a second grader, and my 5th grader said they would not say the pledge because it didn't include Plymouth. So you definitely, you're not gonna, those are the personal stories you're gonna hear about it, and Linda's got a good point. Those people, we've done a lot in the community in the last few years, and a lot of people have lost, and a lot of people have just accepted it and moved on. And you could go globally. You could say, hey, let's throw this out. We could go as far as that, or do we just need to get Plymouth in there as it was started with EDPS, So it's gonna be an interesting conversation. I think the more input you get from a larger number of people, it's information. Again, this comes back to, through the building committee, do we feel we're ready? And then it ultimately comes and sits with this board. But I have heard from people and they think the board's already decided this. They think it's the school that doesn't want this. It's not the school that sent the letter that said, we don't all want it, right? I mean, that's not fair, because I was suspending, saying, wait a minute, this decision has not been made, there's a committee, there's been one meeting, come have conversations, to talk about where you want to get input, come to that meeting and have the conversation and understand it, because Jess is right on. Hey, this isn't just an easy thing to do. This is a big one, and you've learned it. Those people have been on the board a long time.
It really surprised me a lot, honestly, because everyone that spoke as this was a negative thing, and the messages I received was, this is based off my personal association. But take someone from the town of Plymouth, they don't have a personal association to anything. Corinna now doesn't have Corinna, they do not have Corinna Union Academy. All of their names have now changed to something else. So it doesn't take away the fact that those students went to those elementary schools, they graduated from Corinna Union Academy, or they had gone to the Plymouth school when Linda went, things like that. That history does not change just because we're trying to include everybody in this fashion, and I think that was an eye-opener for me that people were so powerfully spoken about that, and it's been continued since last Thursday. It has not stopped yet.
Having been the chair of the first naming committee that we had a couple of years ago, there's a lot of work to it, and we want to please as many people as you can, which there are people that you can't please, but, you know, it was a very eye-opening experience. Not only did people send surveys back, but they were very vocal as to why they thought it should be the way it is. So I think it's valuable to do.
I think this is one of the problems with using names, either for people and different things, or towns or localities. It always winds up down to this, if you're gonna be adding or subtracting towns, the district coming and going, or the district's changed, this is what you bump up against. Maybe look at it completely differently. Throw a wrench right in.
I wanted to add that we invited Courtney to be a part of the committee, who had come and to sit on the meeting. And the question I was gonna ask, should we be considering adding even a few more different perspectives to the committee, or would that make it unwieldy?
You can have too many.
More
people on
opinions
the
always
board,
make it unwieldy.
Well,
But
I
you
mean,
can always ask somebody to come and speak, even if they're not on the committee.
I mean, at this point, we have 4 board members.
I mean, Tanya, Courtney, Mark, Susie, Mike, and myself.
And 1 teacher, really nobody from the public. I
But
don't know.
it doesn't change the fact that if public has emotional responses, or if they want to have their voice heard, I mean, that's the whole beauty of public comment and our technology with apparently Facebook messages and emails, so.
I just want to ask, there, in one of the letters that spoke of financial implications, is there any truth to that? Is there anything that we lose financially of changing the name or not changing the name?
I mean, back in the day, I mean, I think you printed a whole bunch of letterhead and it was expensive and it was, you bought nice fancy paper. I don't think you do that when you spit it out, whatever you have. We
I
did the
think that's
signs.
changing signs.
When we did Ellen, we did your sign, the PTO, we did one we purchased and one PTO purchased, and I think, and those aren't bad. I mean, what would you say that, without putting you on the spot, and you commit?
So what are you looking for with the sign?
Was a price, was there a major price when you had to switch?
No, it was
from
like
stress?
$400.
So, financial implications, I don't see it. So that makes it also, I'd still say it's 48, right?
School budget, it's 1848.
We just take our time and when something becomes obsolete, it just, when the needs it.
Did you have anything?
Yeah, we've moved kids within this district between schools for years. What was the one in St. Albans called?
St. Albans Consolidated School.
Okay.
Only St. Albans attended there.
No, there was a couple.
How about Palmyra?
On the end.
Well, like, you got your outliers or whatever, but they used to be just.
So, it's been a precedence, and I'm still weighing where this goes, but it's been a precedence. We've slid people into schools that has town names on it. Obviously, times have changed, so some people have a problem with it, but, so, I don't.
I didn't understand that.
He doesn't just.
You don't understand me either.
He's disagreeing.
Well, you lighten the mood. Thank you very much.
So, I mean, I don't know if it's a problem looking for, solution, or a solution looking for a problem.
Jen?
Wasn't at one time the old Newport Elementary School just called Newport Elementary, and then it changed to Newport Plymouth Elementary?
Yes. It was Newport Plymouth when I went to
Yeah.
See, I don't think that ever was legally changed. I think it was the same scenario that we started calling it Newport Plymouth Elementary.
My report card said Newport Plymouth Elementary.
Like,
on it,
I
but
mean,
the
I mean
on the
signage
school
and
did
things
not
like that
change.
never changed.
Yeah, the signage did not change.
All right, so,
Awesome.
sounds like, anything else you would like to add? Sounds like a busy group. Stick to it. Thank you. All right, and moving on to no old business. And we have new business, staff resignations.
Yep, resignations, this is James with Butch. Dyer, Tracy Dyer, cook at Nicholas Regional High School, and no transfers.
Right, and none of that requires action. So with that, do we have any future agenda items anybody would like to see?
I was asking Mike at one of the committee meetings if anyone on the board would be interested in talking about an earlier meeting time. Again, he said that it's been brought up in the past and didn't fly, but
We used to meet at 7.
Right.
I was like,
I think 6
6.
o'clock sounds pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
8 o'clock in the morning. I'll get it over with.
Now, I don't know how this fits in as future agenda item, but I hate outdated websites. And, you know, occasionally I go to the website because that's the easy way to look up the policies, and ours is outdated. And I don't know why anybody would go to the website, except on the ride over here, it occurred to me that maybe if you were considering buying a piece of property and moving your family to one of these communities, you might look at the website of the district. And maybe if you were considering applying for a job, you might look at the website of the district. And if we could, I don't know if it's a matter of capacity or, you know, it needs to be a future agenda, it's just
I thought we just did that
2020 is
revamp.
old.
what policies are updated, you mean?
Couple
No,
years
it's
ago.
the
The
website, so
website.
nothing's been updated in months,
Years.
it's old news, stuff. I went on there trying to find the school calendar, good luck, that was.
It's not user friendly.
No.
I think,
They all run together.
yeah.
So maybe if anyone
Who's gonna
has,
take us to the project?
if anybody has any suggestions, please forward them to me.
Put it on as an agenda item and
Is
tell
it-
us
is
the
it- is it
unrealistic
by our technology department?
expectations.
Well,
I mean, is it something that maybe a group of kids could look at?
I was just gonna say, I know the students at Tri-County did the Tri-County website,
Yeah.
so.
Well, how about I?
You should
it
probably
can
talk
be
to
a-
Josh and.
It can be a
Collaborative.
agenda item, or it can be an admin discussion.
Why don't we start with an admin discussion, and then if we don't see any improvement or we've got suggestions, maybe it can come back to one of our committees.
People are still gonna just ask on Facebook what time the school opens or what the phone is, so.
You're right, but it, yeah.
Anything else, folks? Guess not. Good night.
Thank you.